Welcome to this week's episode of Cameron's Conversation podcast. And today we have a very special guest, a man who hates bounties with a passion and who can't hold a tan. It's Louis Baker Stroud. What an intro, right? What an intro.
What an intro. It's funny actually because this morning I've literally put a story of me swearing at a bunch of bounties. So it's very accurate. It's very accurate.
Very good.
And I'm going to Spain later on to try and top up the tan, but there's no hope, honestly. It's lost forever.
Yeah, I think that's a 6 month task, not a 6 day task. That one, I'm afraid. I'm afraid.
Correct.
So in this week's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about our group program, Sorted in Six, and what it's all about, who it's for, and also a little bit of who it's not for as well. So just to kind of start off, we're going to talk you through a little bit. And we're obviously super excited about Sorted in Six. We've run what, 13 intakes now so far.
Yep, 13
So
intakes. We're quite experienced at this point.
yeah, we know a thing or two about weight loss and that kind of stuff now. We've just about got a handle on all that now. So for a little bit of context, if you are just kind of fairly new to coming across myself and Louis or even Harry, Sorted in Six is our 6 week program, hence the name, and it's primarily driven at helping people who have been struggling with on-off dieting, doing all sorts of daft diets over the years, or who are just feeling absolutely bloody stuck in the mud with their weight loss. And that's what it is all about. So we want to give you a little bit more context of what it's involved in it, what the challenges that people face coming into it are, and how we can help them get a bit of a handle on it. And also what it's definitely not, and it's definitely not another fad diet. It's not Louis and I telling you to do the cabbage diet, because we do not want to be sat beside you on the train. If you're on that diet, please stay away from public transport. But yeah, so talk us through a little bit about, like, because obviously you started Sorted in Six a good couple of years ago. What was the initial kind of impetus? Why did you want to start Sorted in Six? Start with the deep questions.
Oh, that is a deep one, isn't it? I think I started it because I was just having multiple conversations with sort of one-to-one clients who were about to sign up to my one-to-one coaching. All the conversations were exactly the same in terms of I'm just feeling really stuck, feeling really lost. There's so much noise on social media, and it's only gotten worse because obviously we're talking what two and a bit years ago, so it's only accelerated now. So back then, yeah, there was already too much noise in terms of do this, don't do that, and all of the terminology is very much you must not do this, you must do that, and it's like so it's just extremes, isn't it? And I was just seeing lots of people trip themselves up, kind of get to the point where they've tried everything, they feel utterly hopeless that nothing else is going to work. So what's the point? So they're almost at that tipping point where they just give up, and I hated the thought of that. So I was like, well, coaching so far, one-to-one coaching has gone pretty well. So if there was a way for me to sort of coach more people all at once and kind of take people through, simplify it all, firstly, and take people through kind of a clear start and end date in terms of, the topics that we often talk about, and just simplify it. And I don't want to say dumb it down, because that's obviously not... that's not giving it the sort of respect it deserves, but removing all of that noise, removing all 13 people, 13 people joined, or maybe it was 12, I can't remember, but 13-ish people. I think one of your one-to-one clients, Ali, I believe, is still with you. She was in the first intake, so she knows, she's seen it all. And yeah, so we had 12 people. Took them through similar sort of, obviously we've kind of grown it since then, but took them through, a rough outline of obviously what you guys see in Sorted in Six nowadays, and they really enjoyed it, and then it kind of grew from there. Second intake was much bigger, and then I think you joined for the third intake, if I got that right.
Yeah, that's right. I think I jumped in as of intake 3 as well. So that's when I jumped in at that point. So yeah, it was always good fun. And I think one of the nice things about like Sorted in Six for so many people, it's giving them structure when a lot of the time they feel like they've done absolutely everything. And actually, a lot of the time, it's not the case that they've done everything. It's just that they've done a lot of the things that aren't actually going to benefit them hugely, and they just feel completely stuck because they've done all the things that would, like you typically do. You've cut out carbs for a period of time, but after a few weeks you've struggled and fallen to bits on it, and then you feel really stuck. Then you try something else, maybe like soy or whatever, and you think it's glucose that's the problem, and then you get really stuck because you can't progress any farther. And it's kind of this repeated thing of like maybe doing some of the right things, maybe starting to have a bit more protein, maybe even just being, aware of calories, but your calorie tracking is not very good, and it means that you feel like you've done everything, but you haven't necessarily done the things that actually work that allow you to progress. And I think that's really, really tricky in that regard as well, is that a lot of people just feel stuck even though they're working quite hard at things, and that's really frustrating. And I think for me that's one of the cool things about Sorted in Six, is it allows people to get on top of things and not feel stressed and frustrated and stuck anymore in the same way.
Yeah, it's definitely the people that have felt lost, and they're putting lots of effort in, but just in the wrong sort of areas for that person individually. And this is the
Yeah.
issue we see time and time again with all of these different diets, is they get told this is the way it has to be, this is the best way for it. They try it, it doesn't suit their lifestyle, they feel like they're the problem, and then it just begins this whole cycle of like frustration, like, kind of like piss off, I hate diets, and I'm body positive now. And then, inevitably it comes around the corner and you're like, actually, I don't really like the way I look, I'm going to do something about it, but I don't know what to do. And it's just this never ending cycle, and we want to stop that. Like, that's the whole point of Sorted in Six. We want to stop that cycle of losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight, and just being on this never ending roller coaster ride where you have to have at least sort of 3-4 diets per year. We want to get rid of that, because it's not, we've dieted in the past. It's not that fun, right?
No.
It is a bit miserable.
Don't want to be on a perma diet. Perma diet's not a good place to be, where you're in that weird place where you feel like, I always joke that it's like the grey area of dieting, where you feel like you're constantly on a diet, but you're never really actually on a diet, but you just feel a bit miserable and fed up of dieting, even though you've got so little to show for it as well. So obviously we talked a little bit about, I guess, the why behind Sorted in Six, right? And part of it is just we don't want to see people doing stupid faddy diets, but also like the kind of deeper bit to it as well is like Louis and I both been through kind of like weight loss journeys ourselves, and it's not great to see people struggling. Like, and I think that's one of the things that's a bit more fundamental and a bit more of a serious note, is like a lot of people do put a lot of effort in. There's a lot of frustration, and then kind of what Louis was talking about is, it's all good and well to talk about feeling positive and body positivity, but there's only so far that goes. And I think that, like as coaches, we are always trying to encourage people to be more positive, and absolutely, like, we do want people to have a better dialogue about yourself. If you're criticizing yourself all the time, you can be in the best shape ever and not feel great. Like, I have a friend who did some fitness modeling, and I always think they're a perfect example, as they said when they were doing fitness modeling, you would look at them and be like, Jesus, they could be on the cover of Men's Health, but they were miserable. So it isn't the case that like being in shape solves absolutely everything. However, you equally have this effect of like, if you are not feeling comfortable in yourself, if you are not able to run for a bus, or you are going to tie your shoelace and it doesn't, like, it's awkward to do that, all these day-to-day tasks become like a frustration. Or even if it's just that you're in group photos and you hate the way you look, like, these things are impactful, right? And we can't just talk those things away. Like, it sounds good to say that, and I think it's really cool that there's so much body positivity on Instagram, but also sometimes I think there's an element of, like most things in life, there's a practicality bit to it, where it's like there's probably a balance here where losing some weight and not being a dickhead to yourself is probably a good idea. Like, if you're mean to yourself all the time, ain't gonna work. But equally, you can't just think it away and be like, I am like Louis can't tell himself he's got a tan. Like, he's just kidding himself on there. Like, come on, there's limits, right? So we need to kind of work within those parameters. So I think this is something else that's fundamental to Sorted in Six, is kind of maybe taking the stress away is probably a nice way of thinking about it. Like, so much of the feedback we get is that like people feel more in control, they feel more relaxed, and yes, they are dieting, right? So there is going to be a level of, when we talk about restriction, where they have to make some changes and can't just face plant in a big bite, a slice of cake kind of thing every day. Obviously that's not viable, but a lot of people actually feel less stressed, more relaxed and happier, because they're actually dealing with the thing that they want to deal with, rather than feeling frustrated all the time. So I think there's something in terms of like why we're so passionate about it, in that deeper kind of meaning of it, is is very much to help people get a handle and stop feeling so bloody stuck for years at a time. So let's talk a little bit about who Sorted in Six is for, and then we're going to talk a little bit who it might not be for as well. So obviously you've kind of touched on this, but who do you kind of feel like Sorted in Six serves best? Who's it going to work best for?
So I think Sorted in Six works best for those people who are feeling frustrated with their journey. They want to change. They actively are motivated enough to change. Obviously we don't really want to work with people that expect it to just happen to them. I've immediately gone into who Sorted in Six isn't for. But no, I want to make sure that the people turning up are the people that are motivated to change, but they're feeling frustrated. They don't know quite how to get there. And almost it's the people that feel like we've had it so many times where people have signed up saying like, I felt like this was my last chance. That's who we kind of try and work with, because they're the people that have seen it all before. They're the people that have done things like Slimming World, keto, carnivore, all that usual bollocks. And they know that it only gets them so far. It gets them to a point, they've probably lost weight in the past, and that's fine. And this is the other thing. Sorted in Six isn't really for people that want to lose a shed load of weight really quickly, because you've probably done all that before. You don't struggle with that. It's keeping the weight off that you struggle with. So the whole purpose of the program is to show people how to actually see the results in a sustainable way, not like something ridiculous, like, as you mentioned earlier, cabbage soup and stinking out trains, public transport. We want people to do it in a sustainable way and a simplified way, rather than, having to get a degree in yoga to bend over backwards to fit it in. The people that actually want to maintain it and keep it off for life. And, anyone this is what we always say on the calls in Sorted in Six, what is the point in being here? What is the point of losing weight if you're just going to regain it again? It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating and miserable and exhausting. Right. I've just pulled up a comment that we got from someone. I asked, so we've just had an intake finish, and I just asked, how are you feeling about your health, fitness and confidence before you started, and how are you feeling now? And we've got a comment from someone: I felt a bit lost before Sorting in Six. I used to be very disciplined when I came to my health. However, difficult latter part of 2025 made me lose all motivation to look after myself. Honestly, ended up just using it as an excuse for my lack of trying. This is another thing that we look for. People that need that extra accountability, and they just know that they're not going to do it themselves. She said, I knew I needed accountability and structure to get the best out of myself, and Sorted in Six has given me exactly that. I'm feeling stronger when I exercise, more confident in my appearance. I feel that I have now had the kick out of the bum that I needed to crack on with this myself. I also feel so much more educated on what I'm consuming and how to get the most out of my food, and that knowledge has been invaluable. So one thing that we pride ourselves on isn't just we're going to get you some results. A massive element of our program, even our one-to-one coaching as well, is the education side of things. If we are not teaching you how to do this for yourself, we are not doing a good job. So that's what we pride ourselves on. We want to teach you how to do this. Because we were in exactly the same boat. I certainly was, in terms of my personal journey. We can go into that in a bit more depth in a second. But I felt lost. I felt like I didn't know what the bloody hell I was doing. I didn't. I was looking at, I think bodybuilding.com was the website that I was going on years and years and years ago.
Isn't that where everyone of who's probably 30 years old right now, and who is into training at some point, that is where the font of all suspicious and slightly dodgy knowledge was. I mean, there was some good bits in there. There was definitely some common sense in there, and some good bits, but my goodness, there were some rogue ideas as well. So yeah, we've been there too, where it's just very varied kind of sources of information, and it's no different now. And I guess it's maybe worse now that social media has got so much. And I think that for me as well is a couple of things you touched on. People that need the accountability, which is honestly most people. I think a lot of clients that speak to us or come into Sorted in Six are somewhat surprised how much the accountability helps. I think they knew it would help, and having their own coach in the corner would help a bit, but they don't realize how much that's actually one of the major things, that having someone check in with you that's giving you individual feedback, that's kind of just keeping you on the straight and narrow a little bit in terms of giving you a nudge in the right direction, but also maybe giving a bit of, I mean, I see this all the time in Sorted in Six feedback, where people put so much pressure on themselves, so much pressure, and they can stress themselves out. And some people will fail diets not because they're not working hard at it, but because they are just working, like pushing so much expectation, so much pressure on themselves, that they end up just like snapping under the weight of it a little bit, where it's like, oh, I have to be perfect at every occasion. And of course, trying to be perfect at every occasion for 6 months or 6 weeks, it doesn't really matter how long, is really bloody difficult. So I think that's something that's a fact for me. But another part of it is the overwhelm. I think that we can both say that, like, how many people come in and feedback that they were just overwhelmed before, that they've followed 100 different people, they've got like 50 different saved high protein recipes on Instagram, and they've never used one of them. I mean, I don't know about you, but I have like at least 20 saved, and I've never looked at them. I look at it once and then I'm like, oh, I'll save that, that looks good, and never use it, never ever use it.
The issue is that they're just full of cottage cheese, and I'm not going near that stuff. I'm sorry, you can't pay me to eat it.
Cottage cheese and Bounty, that's where you draw the line. That's
my worst nightmare. My worst nightmare.
Absolutely. But I think this is it too. It's like a lot of it is overwhelm as well. It's like if someone was in the back of your car, if you've got backseat drivers and someone in the passenger seat, and they're all telling you to go different directions, small wonder that you come off the road. Like, you'd be so overwhelmed and swamped. And I honestly think that's what it's like with fitness and nutrition advice. Is like, you've got the intention, you want to drive the car, but you've got 3 different bits of input, and maybe even the sat nav too, and all of a sudden you're just like completely overwhelmed. So I think that's often what happens, and for me, like, that's probably a group of people that we help the most, is just like stripping it down, and we talk a little bit about the science behind it, not in like an overly heavy way, or at least we try not to, because I know I'm a bit of a nerd, and so I know there's a chemistry degree in the background for Louis as well, but like, we try and just make it simple, but also help you understand the why behind it. So rather than us just say, right, just track calories, job done, there's a little bit more explaining that goes on in the background as well. And I think that's really important, because instead of just getting this surface level, like, oh, you should just do this, you should just do that, you start to be able to make informed choice. So you kind of know, like, you go out for a meal, what might be the best options and what things to consider. So it starts to get a bit easier as well. And it also makes you a little bit better at, like, sort of finding fad diets. I mean, anyone should know that the cabbage diet's probably a fad diet. Like, that's somewhat self-explanatory. Like, cabbage soup is not, that's not a menu. It's just not an option, right? But when it comes to things like no carb, low carb, carnivore diets, all these kind of things, it's nice to be able to spot, like, oh, I can kind of see how that would work, and that might help someone lose a certain amount of weight, but why they will then get stuck down the line. Or I could probably stick to that for a while, lose weight, but then I'm never going to be able to sustain it, because obviously only eating steak is probably not a financially viable option for most of us. It's certainly not for me anyway. It'd be nice for like a week, and that would wear thin pretty quick, I think.
Definitely, yeah. I think some of the best bits of feedback that we often get, pretty much in every single intake that we do, is people at the end saying things like, "I didn't realize how simple this actually was." And it's literally what we said at the start of this. Like, there's just so much noise. I before this podcast, I was literally on a consult call with someone who was asking me all sorts of questions. She was super confused. She didn't know what to do, and that's exactly who we're kind of pointing this sort of stuff at, because we want to get rid of that. We want to get rid of the overwhelm. We want to get rid of all the stress. We want to get rid of all the confusion, and we just want to give you the simplest thing to get you moving in the right direction. And also, well, this is coming on to a little bit of kind of the people that it's not for. I think one of the things that some people do struggle with when it comes to Sorted in Six is, we will challenge your existing beliefs in terms of like what you believe is right for dieting and all of this stuff. Because remember, you've been fed probably years and years and years worth of, health content, fitness content, nutrition content, from like magazines all the way through to social media. You probably have an idea of what is right and what is wrong, but it may not be actually, factually correct. We're sitting here with, obviously, you've got all sorts of qualifications, we've got all sorts of qualifications, myself and Harry. So we know what works. You know, we've done 13 intakes of this. We've coached over 1,000 people. We know what works. And I think we've had it in the past, a few people kind of getting a bit upset that we were challenging existing beliefs, but that's kind of part of it as well. Like, yes, we're going to simplify it, but you know, you might believe that low carb is the only way, and we're going to tell you it's not. It is a way. You know, we're not going to sit here and say you can't do that. That's fine. It is a way, but it's not the only way. And we want to kind of show you that there's more to this than, you know, the things that you've probably potentially been shoehorned into believing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, like, as much as that sounds almost like we're really harsh and mean, we're really not. We're really nice about it, but we'll also do that thing of like we'll explain why, right? So if someone says to me like, "Oh, but I feel like I should be cutting carbs," so we'll then explain that's completely understandable. This is probably why you feel like it. We know that when you cut carbs, that your glycogen levels drop, then you tend to see a big loss of water weight. That's why you see this. If you go zero carb tomorrow, you will see quite a difference on the scales. There's just no guarantee much of it's fat mass. It doesn't work that way. It's just water weight. So we will go into these things and explain, but I'd agree with that. I think if someone's kind of absolutely dead set that the way they're doing things right now is the only way to do it, and they're not willing to kind of take on any sort of guidance or even those explanations around it, there probably isn't such a good fit. And I think that for most people, they find that super useful, especially because when you do have these beliefs around, like, let's say carbs and things, when we explain why that approach would have potentially worked to an extent in the past. And this is the thing, like we always say this, like the analogy I try and use is this, is that a lot of the time with diets, people online they like support a football team. So it's they swear that their football team is the best football team ever, even if objectively that's not necessarily true. They absolutely swear by it. Whereas I guess we're kind of like neutral football pundits, and basically we are just looking at things objectively, and we can see advantages of certain approaches, and we'll use slightly different approaches with slightly different clients. There's certain clients we will focus on certain things more with, and other clients will focus on it less with. There's going to be times certain things are more appropriate than others, but we can see the advantages of it, and we don't have one system or one way to push, right? The only thing that Louis, Harry, and I want to do is get really good results, because that looks good on us, right? If clients get in great shape, which they do, then hey, like that's pretty good for our business. Unsurprisingly, like good results work well. But we don't have we don't have shares in the carnivore diet, like we don't have shares in low carbohydrate, like that's not what our kind of like brand is. So the nice thing is we can just work within whatever works best, right? And that's always going to be our kind of mindset and approach to it. So that does mean, like we say, we'll challenge things, and I think that that's where it comes in. I also think as well, like in terms of people, it might not be appropriate. So if you're kind of thinking this could be for me, let's talk about some of the things that wouldn't be appropriate for. The obvious one is that someone suffering from like an eating disorder right now, like that is something that like that is not our wheelhouse. And like if you were needing a recommendation, we would shift you on to someone who has like qualifications and specialty in that area. That is not what we do. That's not our kind of wheelhouse as such. But that's obviously like a quite a small subsection of the population, but it's worth kind of mentioning. And another kind of, I guess, group that it might not be for, and this is where it's maybe you would work with us but one-to-one rather than sorted in six, and we will say this to people if it's not a good fit, is where someone wants to focus super heavily on their training, and they want to get lots of technique feedback, and they want a lot of structure. So in sorted in six, you will get a workout plan, but it's kind of like a nice fundamental general training plan that's going to suit most people really well. Whereas with our one-to-one guys, we go into the weeds. So if someone has a really specific goal, like I have a couple of clients who are doing like ultra marathons right now, like sorted in six is not designed for ultra marathon runners, unsurprisingly, right? But things like that, if your goal's really, really, really specific, if however you are running a 5k, a 10k, a half marathon, even a marathon, and you want to lose some weight whilst you do it and get a better understanding of nutrition, yeah, absolutely, it'll work for you. But if your goals are a little bit more on the extreme side, or really, really specific, or even if you want to focus on gaining muscle, then that's when sorted in six probably has some shortcomings, right? We'd be honest about that. That if someone said to me, "Oh, Cameron, I'm looking to gain as much muscle as I can over the next 6 months and completely change that side of things," sorting six probably isn't the place to start, because it's more about the weight loss side of it and weight maintenance side of it than it is necessarily the kind of like muscle gain, that kind of side. Would that be about right, Lou? Is there anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I 100% agree. Like for those people that are really into their training, like they will get way more out of us coaches by signing up to one-to-one coaching rather than sorted in six. Um, And it's what I said before in terms of like, if you're not willing to actually put some effort in, like obviously we're going to give you the tools, we're going to give you the structure and accountability to make sure it's as easy and as simple as possible for you to start making a change. But if you expect it to just happen for you without you putting any effort in, there's not much point in doing it, to be honest. Like, honestly, there isn't. And it's one of my little pet peeves, I think, is people signing up expecting it's all just going to happen for them without them putting a bit more effort in. And like, we appreciate that, you know, effort looks different for everyone, if that makes sense. Like, you get the PT saying, oh, we will work the same 24 hours in a day. It's like, well, I know we do, but it's not the same quality 24 hours, do you know what I mean? Because you might have 3 kids that turn into absolute feral human beings when they don't get ice cream every half an hour. So so it's not, you know, it's not fair to kind of compare. But when we see people who, you know, and this is the point of Sorted in 6, we meet you where you're at. We don't just bombard you with loads of stuff. We try and meet you where you're at and try and get you to move forward from that point. But we, you know, occasionally, yeah, we do see people just expecting it all to sort of happen for them without any effort. And it's like, you know, you pay money to sign up. Like, if for you to then not respect yourself, respect the program, like it is a bit frustrating for us coaches. So that's one thing that I would say. Yeah, we do want people to obviously work. You know, it goes without kind of goes without saying, but then we do get the odd occasion where it needs to be said. So yeah, that's one thing I would probably add to that. And yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of who it's sort of not for. I'm trying to think if there's anything else off the top of my head, but I can't really think.
Yeah, if your name's Carnivore Cam and you want to just eat red meat all day, probably not for you. Probably not for you. My alias, I keep joking about this, that what I'm doing is playing both sides of the market. I'm doing the kind of very rational, scientific approach to weight loss, and then also on the other side promoting fad diets under my other my alter ego as well. It's a great business model. But yeah,
you should do some spoofs. You should 100% do some spoofs.
Probably should actually. That's a good opportunity. Yeah, I might consider that. I'm not sure if I can force myself to eat. Is it lard or something? Eats, I don't even want to know, to be honest. But yeah, I think,
all sorts.
I think a sort of common thing that is probably like the biggest barrier to starting with Sorted in 6, because look, it's when we look at Sorted in 6, it is and the people say this all the time, for what it is as a group program and the level of coaching and detail and feedback you get, it's not expensive. Like, it's not a super expensive program by any means. So I think this is the thing, that the biggest barrier really then isn't that for most people. It's actually the worry that it's going to be another thing you fail at. So one of the things, I was having a look at the numbers of people that kind of went through Sorted in 6 and this intake and completed it. And like, the reality is that about 90% of people actually complete Sorted in 6 all the way through, which is really bloody good for sort of a weight loss program. And of those, there's always a couple of people like who big life stuff happens like in the middle of as well. Just the kind of classic something big or major happens in their life. So there's always going to be a couple of people that, you know, have things like that, and that's always really sad to hear. And often they come into later intakes. But the thing that we often say is like the success rate for Sorted in 6 is so high because you have that accountability. So it's not really comparable to something that you've done on your own. And I think if you're one of these people who has maybe experienced like a little bit of like, you know, even if you've done like Slimming World or Weight Watchers, the only positive thing I will say for them is a community piece. And I think that's probably is the only positive thing you could find, is that actually that bit in Sorted in 6 is super strong. Like, there's a community, there's lots of other people doing it at the same time, which is really supportive and encouraging, but also you have your own coach. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, because for some people, like, having that community is really important. For some people, having the coach is more important. That's probably most people, but actually having both together is super powerful. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that holds people back from starting it. It's not necessarily the cost necessarily, it's because that's not such a big deal with something that's kind of shorter term that we're running here. Actually, it's that sense of, am I going to just fail at this again? Like, you don't want to like spend money doing something you're going to fail at. But again, it's very different. It's not like we're giving you some shakes and saying, off you go, just have these for a month. you've actually got your own coach. And I think that makes all the difference as well. So when people talk about success rates, it's really, really high. And, then the next question is, how much weight will I lose? And we're, again, I've talked about this in previous podcasts, it's going to be different for everyone because it depends on how much weight you have to lose. If you have 40 kilos to lose, you're probably going to lose a little bit more than the person who comes in with 4 kilos to lose. But both those people can feel just as bloody stuck, right? And I think this is important. We are all in our own sort of wee worlds and we're all having our own challenges. So actually, it's not about like what's the maximum you can lose. It's about feeling like you've got some momentum, making good progress. So you get to the end of 6 weeks and you feel bloody great for doing it. That's what matters, because I could give you the range of, what's the biggest weight loss we've seen in Sorted in 6? It must be like, plus 10 kilos, isn't it? It's been
I think it's around 10, 11, which in 6 weeks is mad.
Yeah, absolutely. Mad. But equally, we're not, and this is like, we're always going to be really honest. If someone says to me they're 60 kilos and they're like, oh, do you think I could lose 10 kilos in 6 weeks? No. It's a short conversation. No, you can. Can you look a hell of a lot better? Can every bit of clothing you wear feel comfortable and you feel much happier, and you go down a jean size or maybe a jean size and some? Like, yeah, absolutely. But I think that's really, really good context as well. Is like, we are going to get really, really good results with everyone that works in Sorted in 6, but how much weight you lose is going to vary how much you have to lose. And everyone reacts slightly differently, but every single person will come through and say, oh, I look so much different, I feel so much better as well. But yeah, I think that's a good place to round up for today, guys. So thank you for listening. And as always, I appreciate the time that you've taken to listen to the podcast. And if you want to drop a little review, please do so. And if you are interested in Sorted in 6, then you can just jump onto the link in the show notes. And if you are interested in one-to-one, then you can also jump onto the link in the show notes too.